Avatar The Last Airbender, episode 4. Alright, so this episode is probably my least favorite of this series so far that I've watched. Like, I've seen the whole show before, but I'm just out of the episodes I've reviewed so far. This is a really great episode and all. There's a lot of things that I really appreciate about it. It just features some like things that I find less interesting than other episodes. Like, so what I really liked about this episode is we know at the end of last week's episode, the world now knows Aang's the Avatar. So of course the next follow through with that is to show us the world, finally meeting the Avatar. So they arrive at the Kyoshi Warriors little town basically, and they're all in on avatars because the village was named after Avatar Kyoshi. So we see kind of how a village would react to seeing the Avatar, and how they're gushing over Aang and stuff. And he acts the way a 12-year-old would act, which is that he lets the fame go to his head, things like that. And this is good for a couple reasons. Even Katara says it in the episode, that Aang is finally excited about being the Avatar, something he hadn't been up until this point. You also have to remember, this is probably the first time Aang has probably ever received this kind of attention. That's the second point here, of where at this point, when he was being trained to be the Avatar back 100 years ago, he was just with monks and other air nomads, and he was being shunned by the other airbenders who were his friends, because they're like, whoa, you're the Avatar, and so like this is the first time he's getting actual good attention for being the Avatar, which is something a 12-year-old would want attention. He's still kind of a teenager, and still kind of a kid, so it all makes sense. And it's actually some really great character writing that I didn't realize before, and we'll talk about Sokka's plot in this episode that also has some great character development. But yeah, it was just really cool. I like that aspect of the show, or this episode. And you also see Aang's first mistake in the show. Well, I wouldn't say first mistake, but his first major one. Katara kept telling Aang, we need to go soon, and because he was letting his fame get to his head, the Fire Nation shows up, and they at the beginning of these episodes, the people there did not want to be involved with the conflict. Now they are officially involved with war, and that's one of the side effects of war that's horrible. You end up involving just little villages or people like this who don't want to be involved in these conflicts, right? But that's why it's so dangerous for Aang to stay in anywhere for too long, and because of the way he was acting with his ego in this episode, he ended up staying in this location too long, dragged these people into this conflict that they didn't want to be a part of. And that's really like, just seeing Aang feel that pain and that devastation. It's just really great character writing. It's all well crafted and put together. It's just really strong. And then, I don't have anything to say about Zuko's plot in this episode, because there really wasn't much. He just kind of was in the background, did his thing. But we got Sokka in this episode, who has a great character arc. See, Sokka in these earlier episodes is really sexist, and he still kind of is throughout most of the show. But in this episode, we see two sides of him that will be furthered later on. His want to be better as a person and as a warrior. So initially, he's peeved that he was attacked by these warriors who were female, taken down. So he goes to, up to them and goes like, hey, let me fight you, because, and they defeat him again. And he's just upset that these warriors are beating him, right? Because he's a very masculine man type deal. And so seeing him actually have this turn of heart where he genuinely goes up to these people and apologizes to them for the sexist attitudes and ways he was acting, and actually respect and learn to appreciate and respect these people's not only gender as equal to him, maybe not completely equal because he's still kind of Sokka, but enough to where he respects them, and also not only respects them gender-wise as equal to an extent, but also learns to appreciate their culture. And he ends up kind of having a romance later with Suki, which is cute. But it's just like that aspect is really great, and it's just something cool about Sokka because Sokka, I feel like for people who have seen the show and maybe haven't watched it in a while, or maybe they watched it when they were a kid and not when they're an adult, Sokka's just the dummy. Sokka doesn't really think much of in their mind. But if you really look at the subtleties of this character, he is a character who, yes, is very dumb, uh, not very. Um, I would say he's more of a klutz and more of a goofball, not really dumb necessarily. It's not a good way to put it. How do I say it? He's not a dumb character, but he's more of a goof and a klutz, and he has flaws, but he's clearly a character who's working to improve those flaws and be a gifted warrior craftsman. He's a very intelligent person when he needs to be, that's represented in other episodes. So I just like that character established very early on in this. It's just really good. And if you really like, interesting character journeys, Sokka probably has a really good one in the show that doesn't get talked about enough, honestly. I mean, every character has their own really great journey in the show, except really Toph. Toph kind of has one too, but Toph doesn't grows the least out of all the characters in the show, which is perfect for who that character is, right? But I'm just saying, like, that's the greatness of Sokka in the show. And yeah. So overall, this is a great episode. I just where I get annoyed is like, okay, really, it's it is kind of a cliche, boring plot of like a character letting the ego go into their head, and them arguing, going, no, I'm not letting it go to my head, and then they later have to apologize and go, I guess I did go to my head. It's like, okay, we've seen this before. The way they do it in this show makes sense, and it is new and fresh enough, but it doesn't really make me want to revisit this episode by itself too often, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Honestly, though, I watch every Avatar episode when I rewatch the show. I don't really skip any episodes. All the episodes are good except for, well, actually, I don't know. I haven't seen that episode yet, so we'll see if it's as bad as some fans say it is. What's that episode where the two feuding tribes are together and they're fighting the whole time and Aang has to stop them? Whatever that episode is, I know a lot of fans hate that one. I don't remember hating as much as some fans do, so we'll see.